Welcome to the 8th Annual Hall of Fame Induction Ceremony. I'm Steve Marcus, your MC. Many of you know in 2009, Doug Woodworth started this ball rolling. By 2010, we had our first ceremony. This year we have 10 worthy inductees, bringing the total to 90. In your program on page 5 is a list of everyone by their high school class, so or by decades. So it's a pretty easy way to look up people around your class. So we start this process every winter. We get nominations from the general public. And there's a lot of research that goes in. So a lot of times someone will say, geez, why isn't, so-and-so in the Hall of Fame? Everyone knows that person should be in the Hall of Fame, but we want to have accurate information for plaques, for the book. So a little bit of research goes in, and you can only do so much. So if it ever came up, geez, why is it taking so long for so-and-so to get in? It's just there needs to be a nomination, and there needs to be a research process, and it can be time-consuming. So, like, for instance, we all know Jack Welch is deserving of being in the Hall of Fame. We know that. But do we know that he had 224 wins and 5 state championships? That's important for us to relay to the people that are at the banquet, or really to anybody who comes by the high school and sees the plaques. So who is this committee? Steve Marcus, Kiki Papajotis, Ellen Galanis-Nitch, Sandy Murray, Kathy Spinelli, Mel Bowen, Dan Clasby, Rolly Hinckley, Aaron Woodworth. We all do a lot of work, and everybody sort of had, who did I miss? And Jan, Jan Eldridge she's here. Special thanks to Jan Eldridge. It's next. It is next. Jan keeps track of tickets and who's coming and where they're sitting, so she does an awful lot of work. She gets a little help from Sue Marcus on this day. We're appreciative of her. We thank Peter Pomodori for the tremendous sound system, and Scott Ames at the high school for the microphone that seems to be missing from the Pomodori system. And we want to thank all of our sponsors, and particularly the Institution for Savings, who keeps us afloat every year with the back page. And every year, existing Hall of Famers come back. So tonight, there's coaches, Kiki Papajotis, Jack Welch, Ken Spellman, they're all here. From the class of 1947, Mike Singer. Sitting next to him from the class of 69, Dennis Doty. Making a grand entrance from 1970, Reuben Britt. One of Reuben's classmates, Dave Bialik, 1970. Bubba Galanis from 1972. Roger Day from 1973. Ellen Galanis, 1977. Paul Lees, 1978. And from 1983, Greg Smith and John Davis. So what we'll do, we'll have the inductees come up, they'll take a picture with their plaque. Somebody will say some nice things about them, and accurate things, and then that'll be it. So I would like to, so Steve Hopping will be the first one inducted tonight. And there's some people in this room who considered Steve their very favorite coach. Steve is actually one of the few inductees who's in for a coach and a player. So to induct his brother, Steve, is Barry Hopping.
Thank you, Steve. When I watched Steve play years ago, I never needed these, and I didn't need 36 font. So I hope I have the right guy. First, on behalf of the entire Hopping family, I want to thank the Hall of Fame Committee for the occasion of my brother's induction into the Ipswich High School Hall of Fame. We also want to thank his sponsor, Aaron Woodworth, who spent countless hours tracking down Steve's records, statistics, special recognitions in anticipation of tonight's ceremony. I will say, though, and this is a true story, in typical Aaron Woodworth fashion, I'm coming down Marini's Hill one day, he's on traffic detail. He waves me over, I'm thinking, I'm not speeding, I'm certainly not under the influence, what's he want? I pull over, he said, hey Hop, you gotta do me a favor. Sure, Aaron, what do you need? You gotta write something about your brother. I said, all right, no problem, when do you need it? Tomorrow. We got it done. A debt of gratitude also goes to Tiger statistician extraordinaire John Thomas, who provided us with facts and figures from Steve's high school days that we had long since forgotten. And I'd be remiss if I didn't make special mention of our late parents, Norman and Joanne. They never missed a game and were often our toughest critics, but also impressed upon us the importance, not having a mic makes it tough, commitment, dedication, hard work, and the spirit of fair play. And I'm certain that they're justifiably proud of Steve tonight as well. It only seems fitting that this event, like so many others that have preceded it, should take place during the Thanksgiving holiday weekend. Thoughts prior to, during, and immediately after Thanksgiving always begin with family. And the coming together of brothers, sisters, parents, grandparents, relatives, and friends. In many ways, that same spirit of Thanksgiving continues here this evening as we join together in tribute to our honorees for what they have done and meant to Ipswich High School and our community. We are here tonight as extended members of the Ipswich High School family. And whatever your connection, student, athlete, coach, teacher, or simply a loyal fan and supporter of our inductees, our common bond is and always will be Tiger Pride, the orange and black of Ipswich High School. In introducing my brother Steve, it'd be easy for me to simply flip to his bio in the Hall of Fame program and read to you what is written there. There'd be no debating his many accomplishments. However, as with every inductee past and present, the achievements highlighted only tell part of his story. In my eyes, in the eyes of so many others that played with him or for him, Steve is the most unassuming, modest, humble person we've ever met. For as long as I have known him, it's never been about Steve. But trust me, there have been many countless times where, with the outcome of a game hanging in the balance, that he delivered in the clutch. You'll have to hear about it from me or someone else because you'll never hear it from him. As UCLA basketball legend coach John Wooden once said, it's amazing how much can be accomplished if no one cares who gets the credit. That describes Steve Hopping to the core. In this regard, his approach to every game, every obstacle, every challenge in life has never wavered. He'll prepare, he'll strategize, he'll adjust, he'll encourage, he'll praise, he'll never take the credit. His reward, his satisfaction, his opinion of a job well done has always been defined by the success and accomplishments of the students and athletes he's had the pleasure to teach and coach. Ask him about his induction into the Hall of Fame this evening, and no doubt he'll tell you that he's certain that there are others that are more deserving. As a three-sport athlete for his entire Ipswich High School career, Steve could do it all. A member of the varsity hockey team since the 7th grade, 3 years starting quarterback for Coach Welch's powerhouse Tiger offense, and 1/3 of the dynamic backfield with fellow Hall of Fame inductee Butch Johnson and star halfback David Drown. and a 4-year starter at first base for the Tigers baseball team, where he established his reputation as the best two-strike hitter I ever saw. In subsequent years, and after continued success in college as a member of the University of Maine Black Bears baseball team, a 10 RBI game against Essex, multiple selections to the Intertown League All-Star team as a member of the Ipswich Chiefs, and finally, the youngest player ever to be inducted into that league's Hall of Fame, reaffirmed his evolving reputation as a gifted athlete. His coaching achievements were no less extraordinary, but once again, he would be the first to tell you that much of the credit for his success would more deservedly go to Jack Butterfield at the University of Maine, Jack Welch, Ken Spellman, Walter Dembowski, Arthur Carey, Doug Woodworth, Glenn Foster, Gotti O'Flynn, Lenny Woodman, Roger Day. It goes on and on and on. Steve has always considered himself a student of the game, regardless of the sport he was coaching at the time. He truly believes that you never stop learning, and these coaching icons, each in their own way, provided Steve with the insights, knowledge, and wisdom so essential in making a positive difference in the lives of athletes. It was never about the wins that made Steve most proud, although they certainly helped. As a fierce competitor, he hated to lose, but in defeat, he also saw wonderful opportunities to teach, to learn, and to grow. And as a result, his greatest victories came by watching the young men and women that he taught and coached become doers, achievers, leaders, and most importantly, believers in themselves. As the final line in Steve's bio reads, his legacy will forever be defined by the time he spent teaching and coaching the student athletes of Ipswich. We are so proud of what Steve has done with his life and what brings him before you tonight, but we take greater pride knowing that he's our brother, husband, father, uncle, and grandfather, and that he continues to mean so much to so many. I am humbled and privileged to introduce my brother, Stephen Hopping, 2017 inductee into the Ipswich High School Hall of Fame. Thank you.
Yesterday we were together at John's house, my brother John up in New Hampshire, and of course the topic came up. You're going in the Hall of Fame tomorrow, da-da-da-da-da. John says, there's no way in heck you're going to ever speak as much as Barry is going to. He's probably right. He's probably right. Honest to God, I was looking around thinking, who's he talking about? It's truly amazing. Well, I'd like to thank Woody for nominating me and the committee electing me in, and it's really kind of an amazing experience. Yeah, I did coach with legends, absolutely. The whole thing about it is, when growing up in Ipswich, one of 7 in the family, our idea of vacation was going to the playground. And my dad's idea of me is, do your job, or you're working in the yard. So I needed to get out of the yard. The only 2 things I could do growing up is get in trouble and play. That's it. I could play sports pretty well. So when I got away, that was the deal. And I tried to get to that playground as much as I could, and it was an easy way to just experience what everybody else was doing there. Back then, it was a treat to go to the playground. He mentioned that we have some people in the Hopping-Smith family in Ipswich. I had an uncle that played. He was a Tiger first baseman. I had my dad played, my mother played. All my brothers, sisters were involved. Nieces, nephews. My daughter came over from Triton because she knew being a Tiger was the way to go. And we won championships. It was great. It's a great, great tradition. But what really helped me the most was the coaches that I had in Ipswich growing up. For me to coach, I was programmed. But to experience the coaches that Barry had mentioned, Coach Welch, Coach Spellman, and to be around people that held you accountable. do your work. More than once, Coach Welch had David Drown and myself running at night after everyone else had left, because we thought we had a better way of doing things. That wasn't going to be that way. But we learned character. And then he threw us into his car and drove us up to Maine. And so we went up to Maine our senior year, checked out the university. I fell in love with it, and I was the only one that went there, but after 4 years of having an experience of Jack Butterfield, knowing when to show up, what to do, it was no different. I think Coach may have had him as well as a coach. This guy was phenomenal. So when I graduated and came back to Ipswich, I was ready to go. I was programmed. I was intense. I think sometimes I still am. But coaching was the easy part. It was pleasant. I used to say to the kids that I've never left a practice in a worse mood than when I got there. Simply meaning that some school days, some days at work we have aren't always the best. But practice was. You had guys that would work hard, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Had some serious losses, and we had some tremendous victories. We came from behind with some teams that people didn't expect. But to see them, to give them the skills, to enable them to be successful is what it was at. My idea of the perfect coaching experience would be to have them so well trained and programmed that I could sit on the bench and the whole game would happen in front of us. They'd coach, they'd know the signs, they'd be able to move on the bases. You know, in that aspect, I thought that, you know, it's a game for kids, let the kids play the game. So we tried to do it that way. I know I didn't catch anywhere near you, Barry, but thank you very much, and it's indeed an honor and a pleasure to be in the Hall of Fame for Ipswich High School.
So, not me, just you two.
It's not mine. Wow.
Barry, you might not be.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming this evening. It's always a wonderful evening. It's one of the few opportunities I think we have nowadays to actually experience a lot of the old Ipswich names and people that are around still and enjoying sport and coming to honor our inductees. Tonight I have the honor of introducing Jim Daly as an honoree tonight. Just as a quick introduction, and I'll be introducing his inductor in a few minutes. This is a portion of a letter from his son, Steve, who's unable to be here tonight. But Steve wrote, in 1967, Jim started to write his first daily doubles column for the Ipswich Chronicle. This is what he really has a lot of credit for in Ipswich. In his signature style, Jim praised and also critiqued the performances and coaching of Ipswich High's teams and athletes. Never one to shrink from writing about his observation and investigative background information. He earned praise of many and the ire of some. Despite the differences of opinion he provoked, he was always an outspoken advocate for Ipswich High School sports. And Daly's doubles appeared weekly for over 20 years in the Ipswich Chronicle, ending only with Jim's declining health. Now, I'll end with that, and I would love to introduce now the longtime editor of the Ipswich Chronicle, Mr. Bill Wasserman, to come up here and say a few words about Jim Daly. Bill? Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Well, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here tonight. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Good. Do many of you know who Jim Daly was? How many of you knew Jim? Well, that's pretty good. You're not as young a crowd as you look. You know, Jim came to the Chronicle in 1969. He was a sports reporter and an editor, as well as a columnist. That means he covered the games, and he also wrote his well-known column, Daily Doubles. When I was asked to give this introduction, I needed to remind myself that I was an editor and he was a reporter. And from my point of view, the most important fact about Jim was he was on time with his copy, he was no trouble in the newsroom, and he seemed to be covering the games. So that's sort of a narrow point of view that I had as editor and publisher. So I turned to a guy, I really wanted some critical information, informed opinion, and I went to Coach Welch. Jack said Jim called it like it was. He explained that Jim's son Steve was his first quarterback, Jack's first quarterback, and that made a connection. Jim, this is Jack's quote. Where's Jack? There's Jack over there. Jim was very honest in his reporting, great detail. He loved Ipswich sports. And he didn't pinpoint the kids who made an error in a game. He reported the error, but didn't name the kids. I don't know how I take that as an objective newsman, but fake news again, okay. But Jack added this. Jim was the best reporter I had over the years I was in Ipswich football. I don't think you can do better than that. I think it says it all. I'm proud he was a member of the Chronicle staff, and I'm delighted that he's being honored today. Thank you. Sit on the other side.
All right, I'm delighted. I haven't seen this gentleman for a long time. This is Jim Daly's son, one of the other son. This is Chuck Daly, and he's going to accept the plaque in honor of his dad. You want to say a couple of words?
I'd like to thank the Hall of Fame committee for recognizing my dad for all the years that he did the sports. He definitely enjoyed watching the games, and every night after a game, he'd be upstairs typing away on the old manual typewriter with his two-finger technique until at least 9:30 or 10 after any game that was played. But he truly enjoyed going to the games, and he really enjoyed writing his column once he got that Daly's Double column. And I'm sure he's looking down right now saying, what's this son doing up there? Well, my older brother couldn't make it, so I'm here. So anyways, also like to thank the committee for recognizing all the other inductees tonight. And I've been away for 24 years down in Nashville, and I was looking through the book that everybody got, and I'm thinking, good God Almighty, look at all these people. I know almost all of them. So thanks to the Hall of Fame committee, and thanks for all you people recognizing all these players tonight and coaches. And I want to see who else is coming up here and what they're going to say. So thanks again.
You're going to hold the plaque, and then we're going to take a photo. Okay? Geez, Chuck, it's good to see you. Where are we going? Just Chucky and Bill. Just Chucky and Bill. Yeah. Okay, there we go.
Put my coat first.
Is that it?
I want to say another word.
Oh, wait a
I
minute.
want to say one more word, if I may. I'm sitting next to Mel Bowen, who's on, and he's on the Hall of Fame committee. And he passed this information to me. He said, without Jim Daly's record of the Chronicle and his work in the Chronicle, we wouldn't be able to find who's going to go onto the Hall of Fame. So Jim's here with us, and he continues to have an influence. Thank you.
I would have said the same thing when I talked earlier about the information that we need or we want. A lot of it is going back to the library and looking at old daily doubles columns. It's very helpful. Barry touched upon sort of like that Ipswich pride, the Tiger pride. Bill Wasserman give you this feeling like when we were growing up in Ipswich, that the Chronicle was, we waited every Thursday, and it was a really good paper. And there's a nice display of it in the back, with a lot of the different columnists and editors. Huey's looking at it right now. It's just my way of saying thank you to the Chronicle, because it's been very helpful to the committee. Maureen Bowen is the next inductee, and to help us is Kiki Papajotis.
Good evening. I want to thank Bill Wasserman, because last year we inducted Gene Dower, who also worked for the Chronicle, and so we have two former media correspondents who helped us, the Hall of Fame committee, in our selection for these worthy inductees. So thanks, Bill. You had good staff. Thank you so much. Also, I would also like to say, for all you Tigers out there, Elliot would be so proud tonight. So it's my pleasure right now to introduce to you our next inductee, Mo Bowen Bode. And so let's start with the playgrounds and youth sports programs in Ipswich, which have been highly touted as breeding grounds for future outstanding Ipswich athletes. And Mo is no exception. Maureen Bowen Bode. Think about that one, right? I'm just going to refer to her as Mo, because that's how we know her. Her childhood revolved around the next sport, season, or game. On many occasions, Mo would change uniforms in the family car, moving from one sport to another. She benefited from the youth sports programs at Ipswich that included soccer, basketball, and softball. When Mo arrived at the middle school, there weren't enough girls to field a soccer team, so Mo and several of her friends decided, let's play on the boys' team. Why not? When Mo actually finished her middle school career, she entered Ipswich High School in 1978. She helped establish the girls' soccer program, paving the way for future players. And paved the way she did. While at IHS, Mo established many scoring records, was chosen MVP twice, and was selected to the first Salem News Soccer All-Star team. Soccer wasn't her only sport in which she excelled. Mo was an all-star, feisty point guard for the basketball teams and was an all-league player on the Cape Ann League Division II Championship softball team, where she batted .400 in 1981 and 82 tournament play. After graduating from Ipswich High School, Mo headed for NCAA Division II Stonehill College to play soccer. While at Stonehill, Mo held the rookie record of 20 goals and is among the top 5 scorer for career goals at Stonehill College. She helped establish Stonehill as a competitive women's soccer program. After graduating from Stonehill, magna cum laude, Mo continued playing soccer for the Eastern Mass Women's Soccer League, where she was the leading scorer for the 1994 Division II championship team. For Mo, growing up in Ipswich as an athlete, as we all know, instilled in her a sense of pride that she still carries with her today. Mo has been a guidance counselor for 21 years, helping kids in support and seeking their futures. It's a great honor for me to introduce to you Maureen Mo Bowen Bode. got it? Can you do it?
First, I'd like to thank the Hall of Fame Committee for all of the time and effort they commit throughout the year to make this such an enjoyable event. I feel very fortunate to have been born and raised here in Ipswich for many reasons, but tonight I will focus on the support we have for athletics. Growing up, I was lucky to have played in the first organized softball league for girls, to be among the first generation of youth soccer players, and to have played summer league basketball as early as the 8th grade. My entire childhood and teenage years revolved around when the next game was happening. It didn't matter if it was men or women. In Ipswich, we all played as equals. On the old high school fields and in the gym, the short court down the junior high, and on the fields and courts at Bialek Park. Age didn't matter as long as you could hold your own. Many of my teammates and opponents are here tonight, and I want to thank all of them for what they taught me playing the game. As a young adult, I had the chance to test what I learned in Ipswich on the fields and courts around Eastern Massachusetts and beyond, and I realized that my experience in Ipswich was unique. The sports history and the legends that we learn make this a magical community where people appreciate not only the players, but the coaches, families, and townspeople who come out to support the games. I had the privilege to play into my early 30s and was probably in the best shape of my life when a frustrated opponent slid into me and blew out my knee. I never played another competitive game. At the time, I thought it had changed everything. Playing the game had factored into nearly every decision I had ever made. What I soon realized was that what I had actually learned playing all those games were life lessons that my coaches, mentors, and teammates taught me about taking risks, challenging myself, being disciplined, and supporting one another. The important things were still there. It wasn't just about winning and losing. It was about ourselves and the connections we make that contribute to who we are and what we become. I work with young people every day, and many of them are struggling. I cannot express enough how critical it is to establish those relationships that anchor them in this world. I will be forever grateful to have played and lived in this community. I am thrilled to have the opportunity to publicly thank all of the people who supported me, cheered for me, and taught me how to win and lose with grace. Thank you.
Take your glasses.
Thanks, Steve.
Oh, here.
Could I invite the voice of the Tigers, Mel Bowen, up? Mel had a good day yesterday. Tigers had a good day yesterday.
Josh, how are you? Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 2017 Hall of Fame induction ceremony. I am here to present, Brian Faniff. Brian, heck of a kid, heck of a guy. Brian and I met a couple times for lunch and spoke about his time here in Ipswich and his accomplishments and stuff. Let me get my glasses, hold on. I always forget something when I come up here. All right, Brian and his family came to Ipswich from Morris Plains, New Jersey. Boy, what a game that was for Ipswich. Not only was Brian there, but he had a couple of brothers, Jeff and Mark, who were pretty accomplished athletes themselves. And not only that, they brought a second generation when Steve came into the Ipswich High world. So, a lot of contributions from the Faniff family. When Brian was in the 6th grade, he went to the Dorian School, which is where he met his first coach in baseball, Bill Bell. went to junior high, where he then met Coach Steve Hopping. And per Brian, Coach Hopping always brought the best out in me. On to high school, Brian played varsity football under Coach Jack Welch. So far, he's had some pretty good teachers. He played wingback, safety, and was the team's punter and kicker. He was a Cape Ann League All-Star for 3 years, captaining this team in his senior year. He was also an Aganis All-Star and was awarded the prestigious HAPER Award as the team's MVP. The trophies you can see over there on the display table. Then there was basketball. Played varsity for 3 years, team captain in senior year, Cape Ann League All-Star for 2 years. Senior year, he was team high scorer and was awarded the prestigious Dudek Trophy as the team MVP. Brian's senior year, which he captained, was also the 1977 basketball team that was state champions. Brian also said that another name that's going to come up tonight, Judd Logan, Bruce Roby, and Marty High made significant contributions to the 1977 championship, Logan and Roby as underclassmen. Then came baseball season. He played under Coach Walt Dembowski, another Hall of Famer. Brian was a pitcher and shortstop, had an outstanding one-loss record as a starting pitcher, Cape Ann League All-Star for 4 years. He was the captain of the team his senior year. Brian was also voted most athletic in his class. He then went on to Ferrum Junior College in Virginia, played football. He punted and was also on special teams, which they called the Suicide Squad. And that team won the National Football Championship in 1977. Brian also played for the Ipswich Chiefs for 11 years, retiring at age 28. Per Mike Singer, another Hall of Famer, Brian was very competitive, a good athlete, pitched very well for the Chiefs, and always came to play. In addition to pitching, Brian also played shortstop and outfield. Per Brian, I had a fastball that couldn't break a pane of glass. He could throw any other pitch for a strike if needed. Brian came back to the Chiefs at age 38. That year, he lost 2 games in that year, both to Topsfield, who were the eventual Intertown League champions. Both of those losses were one-hitters. Pretty good resume, I think. It's my pleasure to introduce Brian Faniff.
Thank you, Mel.
Brian, my pleasure, buddy.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Mel didn't tell you that he was my second coach. In, what was that, Babe Ruth?
That was Pony League.
Pony League. Very good coach. Not as good as Mr. Hopping, but very, very good, very good. I'd like to thank the committee and everybody else here for showing, and Dempa, good to see you. I'd also just like to make a little thing as far as my parents, as far as bringing the Super, not the Super Bowl, bringing the, see, this is why I'm not up here. Booster Club, bringing the Booster Club when we first came here. I think that was a great spot for them. And otherwise, I just want to thank all my other companions here that have made it, and all the other people that I played against. And that's probably just about it. Thank you very much.
Those of us that played with Brian or watched him play, really, I think maybe one of the best all-around natural athletes we've probably ever had at the school. And he was one of those guys who was like tricky. You know, like he could go behind his back when he was in sixth grade, or could spin a ball. I know when he was playing third base and there was a runner coming in, Brian would be like, he probably was whistling, you know, looking around. The ball's coming, but the runner doesn't know it's coming, and then bang, put the tag on him. But that was Brian, right? He was very good, but he also was thinking a little bit ahead of what was going on. So, Brian, congratulations. Oh, and one other thing, thanks to the Dailies Doubles, Brian was named to Dave Whipple's all-time team. I don't know if you knew that, but 3 of those members are here tonight. Ruben, Danny, Alexson, and Brian. I think the other 2 were Bobby Walker and maybe Dickie Merry, but so if Dan Clasby could come up and help us with Bill Coleman.
Thank you, Steve. It's my honor for the second time in 8 years to introduce a fellow classmate of mine from the class of 1973, Bill Coleman. Bill Coleman, like many of our inductees over these 8 years, was an exceptional 3-sport athlete, lettering in football, basketball, and track. During his senior year in football, Bill was the Cape Ann League leading scorer in Russia and the North Shore's leading scorer. He averaged 6.2 yards a carry and was pretty dangerous out of the backfield, where his average yard per catch was 35.3 yards. Bill was selected to the Cape Ann League All-Star team and was a Boston Globe and a Boston Herald All-Scholastic that year. During his senior year in basketball, Bill was, of course, he was a great rebounder, one-handed rebounder, more like the, who does the one-handed catches on football? Odell Beckham? That's the way Billy rebounded, from what I can remember, right? So during his senior year, the Tigers went 18-4 and went to the Garden in the Tech Tourney, a game they lost by a narrow margin to North Andover. And Bill was selected to the Cape Ann League All-Star team that year. Bill really excelled in outdoor track. Have you ever seen Usain Bolt? In those days, they only ran 100 yards in high school, but Usain Bolt, they did 100 meters. Well, when Bill was at about 90 meters, or 90 yards, I should say, he used to take a look back to see where the other competitors were. And he just ran hard enough those last 10 yards just to win by that much. Bill was undefeated in the 100 and 220-yard dash in the Cape Ann League for 3 years, 1971 through 73. He was also the Class C state champion in the 100-yard dash in 72 and 73, and was the Cape Ann League champion in the 220-yard dash in 1972. He was the Cape Ann League MVP in both 72 and 73. Bill also set at that time the Cape Ann League long jump record at the 1973 league meet. So Bill told me he was going out for baseball in those days, but he ended up in track. It was Ken Spellman, and I'm sure Ken was happy about that. Following his career at Ipswich, Bill played college football at UMass, where he was the first-team Yankee Conference running back in 1977. Bill currently resides in Amherst, and it's my pleasure to introduce Bill Coleman.
First of all, I want to thank the committee for selecting me for this. I also want to thank a couple of people, other people that goes with this. I want to thank one of the families that I stayed with when I first came through the program that we had. That would be the Ogibas. Is it on? It would be the Ogibas. That was the first family I stayed with. And the best one I ever had. Make this chore easy for me to do and things to get along with going to the school out here when I first came out here. I want to thank the guy that got it all together was Paul. He put it all together for us to be able to come out here. Thank you very much. He made that very pleasurable experience. And there was another family I also stayed with was the Cooks, and they're not here right now. But I would like to thank them very much also. They made a big part of my life when I was here. Also, now I want to think about the school part of this. The school was one of the best things I had when I came here. They say college and high schools are probably the best years. My best years. You can't hear it? Oh, okay. That's better. Thank you very much. To start all over again. They say college was supposed to be your best years of my life, but the high school was the best time I had here. And that all came down with some of the people that I became friends with. Some of them are here now. That's Roger. He's one. Glenn. Jeff Fanoff. And those guys, there he is, Jeff. And those are guys who made my life very easy from when I was here. I enjoyed playing the sports here. That was one of the things used to go around when we was here, when I first came here. And there was the other young man that was here, was Bobby Clark. And we used to get a lot of things told to us when we was playing the sports, was that they recruited us to come out here and play. That wasn't true. We came out here for an education. The sports part was just the bonus part of that. And so when we did play some games, they would bring that up to us, and we just say, no, it's education, but they just had to find two kids that had good athletic skills. You know? So that's what that was. Also, I would like to thank the board again for having me nominated for this. It was something I look forward to, and it was great for them to nominate me, and I appreciate that very much and honor that. And that's about it. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah.
Second time around.
We should be better by now. Good job, Billy. Really.
Hello again. Here we go. It's my pleasure to introduce our next inductee, Kathy Gagnon Daly. I always get the long names. Here we go. So when you grow up in a large family, you can't help but be competitive from an early age. This was the world of Kathy Gagnon Daly. Kathy's competitive interest in sports began in neighborhood pickup games and backyard wiffle ball and flag football games. Because of her large family, finding enough players was not the issue. Ipswich youth sports also had an impact on Kathy's athletic career. She started playing gals softball in 4th grade. In middle school, she played field hockey, basketball, and softball. The middle school athletic experience established an athletic foundation for her high school years. When Kathy entered IHS in 1980, she focused on field hockey, basketball, and outdoor track. Kathy was an outstanding field hockey player for the Tigers. She earned Cape Ann League All-Star honors in her sophomore, junior, and senior years. In her senior year, Kathy was selected as a Boston Globe All-Scholastic. She was also selected as team captain and MVP, as well as being chosen Salem News and Beverly Times All-Star. Kathy was also a 4-year player on the championship girls basketball teams. Again, another feisty point guard. Must be something about that. She was selected as a basketball player, as a Salem News and Beverly Times All-Star. In addition, she was a CAA All-Star and selected as captain and MVP. Kathy also participated in outdoor track. She was very successful 4-year javelin thrower who qualified for the state meet all 4 years. For her athletic participation and success at Ipswich High School, Kathy was selected in her senior year as Outstanding Athlete for the class of 1984. Kathy has used the leadership skills honed in athletics to become successful in business ventures. Kathy now lives in Ipswich, or she still has lived in Ipswich, and has 3 children, all in themselves successful athletes. My pleasure, one of my players, another feisty point guard, Kathy Gagnon Davis. One of my feisty point guard players that was taller than the coach.
Thank you, Hall of Fame Committee, and congratulations, fellow inductees. Being a part of this class is a great honor for me. Mo was a teammate of mine and a close friend. Steve Hopping and Judd Logan were idols of mine, as were some of their siblings. I played for Ipswich a long time ago. So long ago, in fact, that when I played, there was no such thing as a three-pointer or a backcourt violation. And when we had a jump ball, we actually did a jump. Every time. There was no alternating possession. There was one-size basketball, no girls' ball, no boys' ball, just a ball. We didn't wear goggles or shin guards, and we tied our mouth guards to strings around our neck. There were no club teams, no AAU, and no such thing as social media. It was a simpler time, and I wouldn't change it for anything. I'm so grateful for my experiences at Ipswich High School. I was fortunate to play on very successful teams with very gifted athletes. I'd like to thank my teammates from all 3 sports. I wouldn't be standing here today without each and every one of them. I'd also like to thank my coaches for setting such high standards and being great role models. From junior high with Ellie Knowles, Rick McDonald, and Jane Rotzko, to high school with Holly Johnson, Wayne Arsenault, Mickey McMahon, and Kiki Papajotis. I was truly blessed to have the best of the best. Mickey and Kiki were amazing. Our teams were always so well prepared, so well drilled, and so well conditioned. I have so many fond memories. We battled hard, and we were bonded tightly. Sometimes in athletics, it's not only about your experiences on the court. My favorite memory is when Kiki and Mickey took our team to Virginia to watch the NCAA finals. At the time, I probably didn't appreciate the enormity of the situation, but looking back now, I realize how huge this was. I got to see Cheryl Miller, a basketball legend, play against Kim Mulkey, another basketball legend, who now coaches at Baylor, and I was sitting in the stands right next to another basketball legend, Kiki Papajotis. Thanks, Kiki, for giving me that gift of a once-in-a-lifetime trip. I'd also like to mention my athletic director, Elliot Roundy. Mr. Roundy meant so much to me. He loved athletics. He loved Ipswich. The thing I remember most about him was he cried a lot. He cried when we won. He cried when we lost. He cried at banquets. He cried at graduation. He was passionate and caring and completely dedicated to Ipswich. I adored him, and I think anyone who knew him felt the same. Whenever I attend a game at Ipswich High School, I hear the announcer say, "Welcome to the Elliot Roundy Memorial Gymnasium." I get a little choked up because I know Mr. Roundy is looking down on us. He's probably crying, but they're tears of joy because it's his favorite time, game time. I want to thank my new in-laws for being here tonight. Kiana, Joe, Misty, and Jack. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thanks for your support. I've been so fortunate to be able to see my children excel in sports at Ipswich. My daughter Riley is a freshman. She's just beginning her athletic career, but she's already making a name for herself, becoming a Cape Ann League All-Star, her first sport in. I will not be surprised to see her standing up here someday. My daughter Kelsey, also a phenomenal athlete, started all 4 years in all 3 sports and is now on a lacrosse scholarship at Merrimack College. She will also likely be standing here someday. My son Aaron, who is truly the best man that I know, was also an outstanding athlete. He hit the buzzer beater his sophomore year to send his team to the North quarterfinals. His senior year, he scored the winning touchdown during the Thanksgiving football game to snap a 3-year losing streak. Yes, I'm a proud mom. My kids are incredible athletes, but more importantly, they are incredible people. Thank you so much for being here. Almost done. 2 years ago, I started to get really sick. I was in and out of the hospital too many times to count, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. Kelsey and Jack spent many nights sleeping on the hospital room floors, and for months Riley had to help me get dressed and help feed me and help me walk. And finally, after a year, I got a diagnosis and was told I needed to start treatment at Mass General immediately. And all during this time, Mo and Kiki and Mick and a lot of other people called to check in on me. And one day, Rick McDonald stopped by my work and offered to drive me to chemo. He said he was retired and he had plenty of time and he wanted to help. I couldn't believe it. I was overwhelmed. This was my junior high basketball coach offering to drive me into Boston. I got into my car after he left and I started to cry. Elliot Rondi would be so proud. I believe there is something truly special about being an Ipswich Tiger. When you put on the orange and black, you become part of a family. Not just for 4 years, for life. I am honored and proud and so grateful to be part of this family.
Next up will be Bill Alexson, who will join his father, Doc Alexson, in the Hall of Fame. Neighborhood guy, from my neighbor. I learned a lot from Danny and Billy, so that I got to be this is a good Dave Whipple story, but it'll be brief. Got to be a pretty good shooter, especially in junior high when I spent a little bit more time at the Alexson driveway. And so then I get to high school, and Whipple and Kenny are sitting together, and Whipple grabs me. You can imagine. He says, "Kenny, when he was in the junior high, I thought we really had a pure shooter coming up to the high school. He has not hit a shot since." So, and inducting Bill is the son of another Hall of Famer. So, Bob McKenna. Are you Bob McKenna Jr.? I am. All right. Yes. So, come on up.
Thank you very much. I'm becoming a regular here, and I'm kind of liking it. Food's good, crowd's nice. See if I can read my chicken scratches this year. Billy and Alexson, I met Bill Alexson in the winter of 1963, and I was a ball boy. Actually, truth be told, I was his personal ball boy. On the way to the games, my dad, the coach, would instruct me during warm-ups, your assignment is to feed Bill Alexson. We want him in a groove by the time the game starts. So, by the way, the other ball boys with me is his brother Andy and Tommy Dudek. We were the three ball boys. But Bill got a personal ball boy. All right, so the first time I met Bill, I'll never forget, it was a Saturday morning practice. I think he scored 30 points the night before. I'm 8 years old now. He's 16. He's a sophomore, 6'4", shoulders out to here, and then he shook my hand. He introduced himself, and he swallowed my hand. He has got the biggest meat hooks of anybody I know. All right? Anyway, the decade of the 60s, the Cape Ann League, it was like a golden era for basketball. the Cape Ann League. Players like Rick Kathman, Brian Peters at Manchester, Tom Bedell at Masco, Dick Hassinger and Steve Colella at North Reading, Steve Rowell, Frank Davis at Rockport High School, Bill Poehler at Hamilton Wenham, who was a rival to Bill, who, by the way, I'm told by his brother Danny Alexson, Amy Poehler, the comedian actress, is his daughter. If you need trivia, Danny's the guy you got to see. He's an encyclopedia for Cape Ann League basketball, the history of the league. All right, so Billy started for his sophomore year on that 63 Cinderella team that won a lot of games in a row, just to qualify for the tournament. When they get in the tournament, they go on a run. They beat the #1 seed, and they just go on a run, and I'll let Bill tell the other story about the loss. I won't go there. He was guarding the guy who threw it in. Wow. Needless to say, it was at the buzzer. It was the only basket the guy scored the whole game. He didn't sleep for a week, and my dad didn't sleep for a month after that game. All right? In '64, he averaged 20 points a game as a junior, second leading scorer in the Cape Ann League. Very strong league. In '65, his senior year, he averaged 25 points. And everybody that watched those games know it would have been 30 plus if the three-point shot was in play then. It wasn't. CAL, Cape Ann League All-Star junior year, senior year, captain of the All-Star team as a senior. Set the single-game scoring record up to that point with 43 points his senior year. And everybody says it would have been 50, again, if the three-point rule was in play. All right? Now, from Ipswich, Bill went on to Gordon College, had a stellar career there. They won league championships. They went deep playoff runs in Division III basketball. Then he hooked up with Athletes in Action upon graduation. Professional team that toured the country and played the top Division I college programs in the country. He played against Marvin Barnes and Ernie DiGregorio, that Providence team. His brother Danny tells me he didn't miss a shot in that game. Did not miss a shot. How'd you do guarding Marvin Barnes? Then from Athletes in Action, he went overseas and played in Greece professionally for 2 years until he blew out his knee. He came back to the States and he hooked up with the Boston Celtics as their chaplain. And that was a good era. This is 1980, so this is the Bird, McHale, that era. He has stories to tell, let me tell you. Wonderful stories. In '92, Bill started Pro Sports International, his own company, which he runs still today, 25 years later. What he does is he takes retired NBA basketball players all over the world, all right? And he brings them a lot to underdeveloped countries, urban places in the United States. And it's two-pronged. It's to put on an exhibition game and then get to the kids and talk about making good choices, doing the right things. And these players get up with a microphone, who these kids worship, and send a message. And then Bill is the MC of the whole event. That's what he does. All right? So we go way back, and I got to share just a couple things. So as kids, when we're young, we look up to these guys, student athletes, role models. And sometimes you meet them later in life, and you get disappointed sometimes. Not this guy, let me tell you. Just a couple quick things. So I run into Bill at Gordon College's alma mater in 1980. We end up on the same team in a full-court pickup game. Now, I consider myself a shoot-first, pass-second guard. Not that day. I'm playing with my idol here. I just feed him the ball, and he goes off. We get to the locker room. We get caught up with what each other have been doing. He tells me all about his experience with the Celtics and then the business that he runs. I mean, he goes from here to there. The next time I run into him is 15 years later. He comes in, flies in from somewhere. My dad's calling hours, just flew in from some undeveloped country, short notice, he walks in with Danny. That's just the way he is. Just the way he is, all right? So it is an honor and a privilege for me to introduce Bill Alexson, who I cherish the friendship. It really is an honor. Bill, thank you.
Bobby, that was almost flawless, but you left one guy out when he made all those Cape Ann League stars. You got Ruben Brett right over here. Let's give Ruben a hand. And it's not Power Sports International. Sports Power International is the name of my organization, but it's certainly a great honor to have athletic achievement honored. But I think what makes this so special is that we get to be with our peers here, seeing all of our friends, and I think that we should all give the Hall of Fame committee a round of applause for putting this on, and all the hard work that they do. And, you know, I was thinking about what I was going to say tonight, and I thought, you know what? Any success I have in basketball from Ipswich is because I'm a product of my environment. When I came to Ipswich High School, I had Jack Welsh. He was like Belichick to me. You know what? You might think I'm embellishing, but no. I mean, hey, you knew if you were going to be an athlete at Ipswich High School, you had to be ready to play. They took it serious around here. This wasn't recreation. This was you. They wanted excellence. You were playing to win, and you had to be ready. And I looked at Bob McKenna, my coach, like he was Brad Stevens, and I looked at Elliot Roundy like he was Bear Bryant. And I had them, and you know what? They deserve to be up here. They do, because we have a rich tradition here. And I remember that my dad took me to Ipswich High School game when I was in the 7th grade. Cammie Wallace, my cousin, was playing. They had an undefeated season. I mean, you thought the roof was going to come off from the fans. And at halftime, I'd go down in the corner, the junior high school. Cammie Wallace come over, throw me a ball, right? And I'd shoot it from the almost a three-point line. If I made that thing, oh my gosh! And I got so excited about basketball. And I came home, I had my dad put up a hoop in my driveway, and I'd be dribbling and dribbling and dribbling. And if you think I'm embellishing, you go to Maureen Woodworth. And am I right? You could hear the ball all the time, right? One time my neighbor Lorraine opened up the window and says, "Billy, do you know what time it is? Go to bed, close it, quit dribbling the basketball." So I played JV basketball, and my JV coach said to me, "Bill, if you don't get more aggressive, you're not going to be on my team next year." So I thought, well, if I'm not going to be on his team, I better go to the varsity. And there was one way to get to the varsity at Ipswich High School with Coach Bob McKenna. It was via the playground that Stevie Hoppin talked about, the ball grounds, Linebrook Playground. And you had to apply through Bob Tobias, the king of the ball grounds. Right, Ronnie? Right? Hey, he ran the show. We'd be down warming up. He'd be up eating. When he'd come out of his house, it was like El Cid in that movie with Charlton Heston. And everybody get on their toes. And then he'd say, "All right, Henry Cole's down here, you down here, Alex, you're down there with Ronnie Hopp and these other guys, right?" And who would I have to guard? Henry Coles. He was killing me all summer long, okay? Little did I know he was going to turn out to be set the scoring record for the Tech tourney that year, okay? So I'm thinking I'm getting killed, but he's really bringing my game up. And I grew 2 inches, and I made the varsity. Wow, I'm on the varsity. And we lose 5 games my sophomore year. And even though I played professionally in Greece and on the national team in Greece, my sophomore year in high school was my greatest basketball experience. We lost 5 games. I started to get a little bit more confidence. I got inserted in the lineup, Henry Cole started to take off. We started winning game after game after game. All the teams that killed us, we started to beat them. Now we've got to beat Carmelite Seminary to make the Tech tourney. They beat us by 30 points the first game. And they got 6'7", 6'7", 6'6". The tallest guy on our team is me at 6'3", and I'm a sophomore. Henry Cole's a 6'2". We beat them. He fouled out so many guys. So we go in the Tech tourney. We knock off the number 1 seed, Marshfield, in double overtime. And then, as Bobby was alluding to, I'm guarding this guy. He made 2 free throws the whole game. We're up by 1 point. He's out the top of the key. Some guy yells at him, "Shoot it, Charlie, shoot it." He did a 360, two-handed, turnaround throw shot that went so hard through the net, it hit the cement wall and rolled back out to the half court. And I'll tell you, it was, I mean, you lose buzzer beaters, but this was terrible, okay? Anyways, and I went on to play in those other places that Bob mentioned. But the thing is, I know in my heart that if it wasn't for the foundation that in my basketball experience I got at Ipswich High School, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. About a year ago, we did 122 school assemblies in Baltimore City. Athletes speaking anti-drug, anti-violence, anti-bullying, make right choices in life, accompanied by the police. Then we had a big game at Compton State University across the street from Endowment Mall where they had all the riots. Had 3,000 attendance. Mike James spoke at halftime. He played for the Celtics, won a championship with the Detroit Pistons. I spoke. We got commendation letters from the governor's office, the mayor's office, and the commissioner's office. And over the next 3 to 5 years, we hope to go all over the world with this program. And I'm very excited about it. And if it wasn't for my background here, I know I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. I'd like to close with an inspirational story that involves Johnny Most. How many people know who Johnny Most is? Raise your hand. Havlicek stole the ball! Hey, Johnny, why do you call Rodman and Sally mustard and relish? Because they're both hot dogs, that's why. I became friends with him as the chaplain for the Celtics, and he came upon poor health, okay? So one day I got a phone call, sports reporter. He says, "Bill, you got to go see Johnny." I said, "Why?" "Well, he called me yesterday to say goodbye." I said, "What do you mean goodbye? Where's he going?" "No, he's not going anywhere. He's got diabetes, and they're going to cut his legs off from his knees down on Monday morning, and the doctor said he's not going to make it. So you got to go see him." I'm thinking, go see him? I don't know. I'm going to go see him at the hospital. He's going to get the operation. I realized, hey, Bill, that's your job. That's what you got to do. Come on, go over there. So I go in to see him. I make some small talk about basketball. He's got those pads underneath his legs. He had a little bit of his nostril blown off because he was a chain smoker. And he asked the nurse to get him a cigarette, and he blew up his oxygen tank and blew off a little bit of his nostril. So I'm making small talk with him. And I said, "Johnny, there's one thing all you need to know tomorrow as you go into operation. Isaiah 41:10. Fear not, for the Lord thy God is with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will help you. I will strengthen you. For I will uphold you with my victorious right hand." I said, "Johnny, that's all you need to know." We made some more small talk. I went to leave, looked back in the room. "Johnny, Isaiah 41:10. He goes, "Gotcha, babe." He didn't die. He passed the operation with flying colors. They had a press conference. "Johnny, the doctor said you weren't going to make it. How'd you do it?" "Man of God visited me the night before in the hospital, encouraged me in the Lord, and I knew what I had to do, and I did it." So now, I'm going to go see him. He's got his legs off from the knees down, so I'm kind of preparing myself. I don't want to, look funny when I walk in there. So I go in there, I said, "Johnny, by all rights, you should be in heaven right now. I guess God's got a plan for your life." The way I see it, Bill, if I go through my adversities in life courageously, and that encourages others to go through their adversities in life courageously, then that's God's plan for my life, and I gladly accept it. Those are the words that I think in the days that we're living in, we can all live by. So again, I want to thank the committee. I want to thank my family over here, my wife, my son, Shane, Andy, Danny, Billy, Ruben, Britt, Penny, my classmates, Ronnie, and everybody else here. It's an honor to be in the Hall of Fame, but it's an honor to be here with all of you. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow, 10:40.
10:40? Yeah. All right. Bring your A game.
Danny and I are taking on those two at 10:40 tomorrow in golf. I don't know how we're gonna compete with that. Dave Dalton. Dave Dalton will induct Andrew DeMichael.
Nice placement. I get to follow the toughest act in the place. Yeah. So I had to thank Steve for putting me right after the best entertainment of the night. Always a pleasure. My name's Dave Dalton. I am, for those of you who don't know me, I'm the high school principal. In my 6th year as the high school principal. I'm in my 33rd year at Ipswich High School, which I know, unless it comes with a birth certificate from Cable Hospital, means absolutely nothing around here. Like to wear my principal's hat for a minute and echo Barry's thoughts earlier about the Hall of Fame committee. I'd like to thank all of those who have been active on the Hall of Fame committee, continuing Dougie's work, his dream to have a wall of fame here at Ipswich High School. I know there's a lot of individuals that have been a part of that. Just like to echo the thought that it's really important that all of you who've been inducted and your friends and your family continue to stop by the high school. When you come to games and you walk down the halls and just stop and look at those plaques that are on the wall, it's really important because believe it or not, despite the fact that you guys have all known each other for like 1,000 years here, the population's changing and the history is sort of becoming diluted over time. And it's really important to preserve this unbelievable Tiger spirit and Tiger pride that we have. There aren't a lot of teachers left in the middle school and high school building who remember Elliot Roundy, who remember Arthur Carey, who remember Walter Dembowski. We can't forget Jack Welch because he won't leave. But the mystique and the stigma of that history is so powerful and so strong, and it's certainly something that needs to be preserved for as long as we can possibly have it in this community. I'm certain that the Tigers won the football game yesterday because Jack was there. I'm sure he was sending the play call in there somehow, some way. Were you calling for the kicker? No. I'd like to thank the DeMichaels for asking me to present or introduce Andrew this evening. Andrew asked me to spend a little, well, first of all, be truthful. How many of you found out tonight that Ipswich had a swim team? I think there's some liars here, for sure. You know that. Andrew was on our first swim team, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but he wanted me to talk a little bit about sort of what happened when we developed that swim team. And some of you may not know this, but I was the athletic director for a few years, and something happened in the late 90s that was a little bit challenging, and I don't know if anybody here remembers what that was. Anyone? Thank you, Aaron. Somebody remembers. We lost the stadium. We were building a new school. So I got to be the athletic director during the heyday of athletics. All the fields were destroyed. My phone rang constantly. People were angry at me. Buses going everywhere. We're trying to figure out what was going on. It was a bittersweet time because we were looking forward to our new school. the new stadium, which is beautiful, and we had all that community support, but somebody was trying to triage the building time period. So you can imagine it was a little bit crazy. Well, lo and behold, during this really crazy time with Jack yelling at me about practice fields, Kathy Daly being mad at me because somebody was on the field hockey field, and Steve Hopping running around changing the pipes on the field that Marini had given us to water the practice field that we were creating. We had rebar in the ground and construction fence everywhere. It was just crazy. And then there was Andrew's mother, Joan DeMichael. And Joan would come in and she was like, "Swim team." I saw her coming a mile away. It was never good. It was never good. I smiled, though, and Joan was lovely, and she just continued to be an activist for a swim program, and thought it was really important. We had so many swimmers in Ipswich, kids who were swimming for Beverly, the Beverly Y program, and then, of course, the Ipswich Y came into being, and we had this wonderful opportunity to add a team. So we did, and it was really the work of Joan, the advocacy of Joan, that made it happen. We worked together. We met with the Y folks. Lots of people who helped come together to make that happen. There was some fundraising money. There were all kinds of promises for practice times. We were able to find a coach. And before you know it, we had a swim team. So enter the Ipswich High School swim team and Andrew DeMichael. And Andrew, like so many others in Ipswich, was a swimmer. As I said, there were many kids who were swimming for the Beverly Y. Andrew was sort of an expert in the 100 fly and 100 back, although we did a number of other events. In the first season, he was undefeated in all of his individual events. He earned the team MVP honors. First season for the Tigers, he had a record-breaking first-place finish at the Cal Championships in the men's 100 fly with a time of 57.83. He finished first in the 100 back with a time of 58.95. And he did extremely well in our North sectionals and the states in both of those events. Second season, he continued that success, set the KPN League record for the men's 100-yard backstroke, still stands. He closed out the season at the Cals. He was first place in the 100 fly and the 100 back. He had the Cal record in the 100 back that had been previously set at 56.71. He was the KPN League Male Swimmer of the Year in 2001. And he was the only male representative at the North Sectionals that year. He earned the repeated honor of being named team MVP by his teammates. He had, again, strong finishes in the 100 fly and the 100 back at both the North Sectionals and Division II state championships. Andrew continued to swim outside of the school. He was an incredible student. He was top 5 in his class. He attended Columbia University, where he swam as well. He was on the varsity swim team from 2001 to 2005, and he continues to swim. I don't know if you continue to swim. I didn't ask that question. A little bit, he's giving me the, continued to swim for a while. He was a gold medalist in the Bay State Games in the men's division 19 to 34 in the 100-meter backstroke, and he won 2 bronze medals in the 100-meter fly and 100-meter free. He is currently the Chief Technology Officer at Onduo, a cutting-edge digital healthcare company in the greater Boston area. He resides in Newton. He epitomizes what student athletes should all be about. He's an outstanding individual, and Ipswich High School is proud of the accomplishments of Andrew DeMichael. So without further ado, Andrew DeMichael.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Dave did a ton of work to get the swim team started. And, thanks a ton for doing that. My mom was heavily involved as well, as were some other folks, as Dave mentioned. It wasn't until I was a junior that the team actually existed. And until then, I swam for the Beverly YMCA and had been swimming there since I was 10. And, I spent a lot of time swimming. We trained every day for at least 2 hours, and as we got older, those turned into twice-a-days with added weight workouts. Needless to say, swimming was a big part of my life and basically had been since the 6th grade. At school, though, at Ipswich High School, you know, in particular, I mean, kids knew that I was a swimmer, but, like, to be honest, I was really known for being, like, something of a math whiz, I guess. You know, like, although I got good grades, you know, I saw myself as an athlete because, to be honest, that's what I cared about. I spent a lot more time at swimming, and, you know, spent a lot more time on doing that than on homework, that's for sure. And it was what I cared the most about. So, you know, junior year, thanks to the efforts of then athletic director Dalton and my parents, Joan and Rick, that all changed. And I finally had the chance to swim for my hometown and, you know, make Ipswich proud, as it were. And, you know, have the opportunity to stand here today as well. You know, this would not have otherwise been possible if we didn't create a swim team. And, you know, now me and other young swimmers have this opportunity. Last year, I ran into an old friend from high school. I mean, not a great friend. I had actually talked to him since graduation, but I mean, good enough to, like, start a conversation with him. And, to my surprise, he actually wanted to know how my swimming career went. And, you know, I guess it really didn't occur to me until then. And, you know, frankly, I mean, hearing that I was being inducted here, that my reputation actually had changed. And, you know, the hard work I was putting in outside of school was being recognized in my hometown. And you know, I'm really thankful for that, and that's great. So I want to again thank now Principal Dalton, my parents Rick and Joan, my swim coaches Peg Weber and Kevin Terrell, and the Hall of Fame committee as well for selecting me. It's a great honor, and I'm proud to be here. Thank you.
Does that stay? That stays for the wall?
Got it.
As you get the little one.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I noticed. In the category of putting your money where your mouth is, Chief Technology Officer did not have paper. If you noticed, he had a mobile device here that he was just flipping through. I've dropped these about 10 times. Mel leaves them somewhere else, you know? So, Judd Logan, I was a teammate of Brian's in baseball a little bit, but Judd was a teammate of mine in both junior high and high school. Hit some of the longest baseballs I've ever seen hit. We've heard the term country strong. That was Judd. Judd was a commanding presence on a field. Jack could tell you about his football. I can tell you more about baseball. Matter of fact, Jack told me a story this summer when we had lost to Newburyport, and then we get into the Super Bowl, and they go to a hotel the night before, and they're at breakfast, and Jack is pushing food around his plate. And Judd walked up to him and said, "What are you doing, Coach? Eat your breakfast. Don't worry. We're going to kick their ass." Right? And that's what they did. We all know it was 54-13, but that was Judd. Judd had an interception in that game. So he was actually, Andrew, why don't you come up now? Because I could talk for a lot about Judd, but suffice to say, he was one of the toughest players I've ever played with. And I'll also say one thing else about his leadership. Classic leader. I remember in one of our playoff games, as a matter of fact, that team is the only baseball team we've had that we won the North, and we lost in the state finals against Norton. And in one of the playoff games, tight game against, I think it was Medway, and one of our outfielders made a catch, very nice catch, and as it was for the third out, and Judd was just waiting at the third baseline, clapping, just acknowledging that play, but that was the way Judd was. Consummate team player and really talented to boot. And his brother Andrew is going to tell you a little bit more about him.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks to the Hall of Fame board for electing my brother into the High School Hall of Fame. It's great to see so many old friends. Unfortunately, old is the operative word for a lot of us. It's an honor to be part of this great event. sadly for me, introducing my Hall of Fame brother is the only way I'm ever going to be asked to speak at the ceremony. But I'm not bitter. I just wish I had been better. Anyway, the other day I was going through a scrapbook as I was researching for the speech with a good friend of many of ours, Jimmy Marr. We were having a good time reminiscing as we went through all the old articles and sports memorabilia when we came across Judd's varsity letters, all 10 of them. As I explained to Jimmy what they were, he was absolutely fascinated because he'd never actually seen one. He's not bitter either. All right, some statistics. In basketball, Judd was a starter and two-time captain on his 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th grade basketball team before being brought up to the varsity during that sophomore season. The starting players on those teams changed every year as players dropped off and new ones took their place. The starting team in 7th grade was completely different from the 9th grade and then 10th grade JV team. The one constant was Judd, who started every game. They were 67-1. The only game they lost, Judd was a sophomore. They lost by 1 point to Masconomet when he could only play half the game because Coach Whipple, rest his soul, had him splitting time between JV and varsity. He was a 3-time varsity letterman in basketball. He was a Cape Ann League All-Star his junior and senior years, as well as captain his senior year. Curiously, he never bothered to go to either All-Star game. You can ask him when he comes up. I don't know. Maybe he was just sick of going to All-Star games. He was a Beverly Times and Salem News honorable mention for basketball his junior and senior years. In football, Judd was a two-way starter, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th grade before being taken up to play linebacker for the varsity his sophomore year when Mark Jones broke his leg. Those teams were 40-0. He started at guard and linebacker his junior and senior year. Those teams went 8-2 and 9-1, winning the Super Bowl, as we all know. Combined record of his football career was 58-3. He was a Beverly Times and Salem News All-Star, as well as a Boston Globe All-Scholastic honorable mention. He was picked to play in the Harry Aganis game, and why not? They won it. He was given the Most Valuable Lineman Award by his coaches his senior year. I found a quote written about Judd from another Hall of Famer here, Jack Welch. I've never coached anyone with as much intensity. Judd always gives 100% on every play. Even on a fun Monday practice, he gives it everything he's got. He is so interested in the game and is so dedicated to the sport, and winning it wears off on the other players. He exhibits great leadership qualities. Judd opened up many of the holes Bernie and Paul Lees ran through. Judd is the best guard in the North Shore, no doubt about it. He has great character, great personality, and great ability. He is an outstanding person. After high school, he accepted a full 4-year scholarship, football scholarship to UMass, broke his ankle, and played baseball instead. What the hell? Baseball, 4-year varsity starter, career .380 batting average, 18 career home runs, 28 doubles, 5 triples. He won the Triple Crown his senior year, leading the league in batting average, RBIs, and home runs. 2-time Cape Ann League All-Star, senior year Cape Ann League All-League, as well as the league MVP. The only player in the Cape Ann League to be elected to the Eastern Mass All-Star game his senior year. That same year, his team won the North Sectional, or was in the, they won the North Sectional Finals. Judd was a 2-time Beverly Times and Salem News All-Star, as well as a 2nd-team Boston Globe All-Scholastic. Some other facts about Judd: he was named a class athlete in 8th grade and 12th grade, a class that also included 2 other Ipswich Hall of Famers, Bernie Adele and Paul Lees. Judd, I found him, he's right here. Judd's first baseball game was as a varsity player. His freshman year, he caught a no-hitter from Drew Maccarell. Judd Daly, who's also here, as a coach and a policeman in town, was named after my brother Judd. By the way, it's a true story. I knew his father and I knew Jim Daly real well. During a baseball playoff game with scouts in the attendance from Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and others, Judd hit a grand slam in the first inning. That's pretty clutch. Great fact that I remember, and it was just wonderful. In December of 1977, when his team won the Super Bowl, the #1 song on the Billboard hit charts was "We Are the Champions." It was like it had been written for the Ipswich High School. Judd was recruited by over 100 colleges representing 3 different sports after his senior year. He's been married to his wife, Robin, of 31 years. His son, Justin Jr., who's in attendance, was a 4-year varsity hockey all-star at Algonquin High School. He was also a 4-year varsity golfer. He graduated from UMass with a business degree. His daughter, Teresa, was a 4-year varsity basketball player at Algonquin and scored over 1,000 points in high school. She went on to WPI and scored over 1,000 points for that basketball team. She graduated with a degree in chemical engineering. So if you would, raise your hands and give applause to my brother and Hall of Famer, Justin Logan.
Can you hear me? Boy, I tell you, talk about fake news. First, I'd like to thank the committee, and in particular Steve Marcos, for nominating me. When he first called me about, 6 months ago, I was surprised, but certainly most appreciative. It's been about 40 years almost since high school days, and going back and remembering them, much of what I remember really doesn't have much to do with wins, losses, or particular games, but the coaches and teachers I had. I really wanted to thank all of them, in particular Coach Welch, Spellman, Dombowski, Whipple. There were many others, including Art Carey, but they were mentioning Steve Hopping. And I got to tell you, going back to 7th and 8th grade, there was no better fundamental coach than Steve Hopping. I also have fond memories. People were talking about Elliot Roundtree and how he used to cry. I used to get rides home from Elliot. In the morning back then, we used to thumb to school. We never took a bus. We used to thumb to school. So I'd get out there and I'd be thumbing to school, and Doris Fournier would pick me up. So I'd ride to school in the morning with Doris Fournier and home at night with Elliot, because Elliot, the car smelled of cigars, and he cried no matter what. Not only were all these people great coaches and mentors, but many of the lessons of teamwork, dedication, getting back up when you get knocked down, are lessons that last a whole lifetime. Of course, I'd like to acknowledge all of my teammates. I was simply part of some really good teams. One of the best memories was the '77 Super Bowl. What made it so special, of course, was that we had lost to Newburyport, and then we came back to beat them. But, sometimes I think in, football, me and Roby and Angelakis and McQueenie, we hiked the ball and we just used to watch Lees and Adele just run away from everybody. That's essentially what we did. I also have some fond memories in baseball. As they mentioned, my freshman year, Drew Maccarell was on the mound, and he threw a no-hitter. And so, of course, the next week, Daly's doubles was, Logan caught no-hitter. Maccarell threw a no-hitter, and I think Dombowski let me play from then on. I had a lot of good memories with Brian Faniff with the Interleague Baseball. But most of all, I just wanted to say thank you to the committee, and in particular Steve Marcus, for nominating me. I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
I forgot the Logans and the Dailies. Who could forget the once-a-year Red Sox game? It would take Jim Daly about 10 minutes to get the Logans on the bus, right? Andy Logan, Billy Logan, Tommy Logan, Justin Logan, Betsy Logan, Mary Logan, right? Right? And I haven't even named all of them. But anyway, so we have one left. It's hockey coach Bill Laxo and Hall of Famer and son of Hall of Famer Dave Bialik will induct Bill.
good evening, everybody. I'm Dave Bilick, Ipswich High School class of 1970. In September of 1966, Bill Laxo began his career as an English teacher at Ipswich High School, a career that spanned almost 4 decades until the early 2000s. That fall, he began an 11-year stint as the school's ice hockey coach. Had Bill had his way, he would have coached longer, but sometimes things happen in life that are beyond one's control. Tonight, 51 years later, it's my distinct pleasure to present Bill for induction into our Athletic Hall of Fame. To appreciate Bill, you have to understand how well-rounded and versatile this Peabody native was. Bill was more than an English teacher and a hockey coach. He was a true academic who served for some 25 years as the chairperson of the English department, beginning with the 1977-78 school year. But accepting the chairperson's position came with a price for Bill personally, because the decision makers, the superintendent and the school committee, had mandated that if Bill accepted the chairperson's position, that he would have to relinquish his coaching duties. I know that giving up his coaching position tore him up at the time because he loved hockey and he loved to coach the sport. And this is what made it even more difficult. Bill had every expectation that the 1978 hockey team would be one of the 2 best teams that he would have coached to that point, along with the 1970 group. And, as fate would have it, Bill was right, as the 1978 team would become the 2nd Ipswich hockey team to qualify for the state tournament. I would describe Bill Laxo as one of the nicest men you'll ever meet. He's gracious and polite. He's intelligent, very intelligent. He's well-read and articulate, great family man, excellent teacher, great coach. When he put on his coach's hat, Bill wasn't a backslapping, high-fiving guy. Rather, he was a serious, no-nonsense individual and plenty tough. And I will tell you, he was ultra-dedicated and ultra-determined. I played for Bill the first 4 years that he coached. I believe that it's safe to say that Bill's experience as the school's hockey coach was both different and unique from that of any of the other Ipswich coaches of that era. Nobody faced the hurdles that Bill faced when he assumed his coaching duties in the fall of 1966. To begin with, Bill didn't exactly inherit a successful and established program, as evidenced by the fact that the previous year's team had played a 15-game league schedule and had achieved only a single victory. Further, and I've always felt that this is really the core aspect of Bill's entire 11-year stint as the hockey coach, while other towns and cities had youth hockey programs that ran for 6 full months, from the beginning of October until the end of March, Ipswich did not have a youth hockey program until the fall of 1972. Without a youth hockey program, there was no pipeline of talent to stock and restock the high school program. When Bill conducted his first on-ice practice in December of 1966, many of the players were skating on an actual hockey rink for the first time. Their experience with the sport was limited to skating and playing on the frozen surfaces of the Ipswich River out here and Baker's Pond, and only then when the weather cooperated. To say that Bill had his hands full would be an understatement, and the first 2 years, 1967 and 68, were especially difficult. During those 2 years, not a single league victory was achieved. But the players were learning the hard way, especially the 8 players from the class of 1970, 7 of whom were multi-sport athletes. As for Bill, the measure of the coach and of the man was not wins and losses and X's and O's. There was no quit in Bill. He was so dedicated and so determined. I learned so much from Bill Laxo about dedication, determination, and perseverance. Everything about Bill was onward and upward, and he refused to allow his players to adopt a defeatist attitude. His resolve to see his players in the hockey program improve was steely. An improvement did take place in year 3, the 68-69 season, when Ipswich played a competitive independent schedule as evidenced by his team's record of 7 wins, 5 losses, and 1 tie. And then there was the special, almost magical 4th season that Bill coached, when the 1970 team recorded an undefeated regular season with 12 wins and 2 ties, won the Twin State League Championship, and in so doing became the first Ipswich High School team to qualify for the Massachusetts High School Hockey Tournament. At that time, only 32 teams from all of eastern Massachusetts, regardless of school size, qualified for tournament play. There were no separate classes or divisions. And at that time, Ipswich became the smallest school by far to ever qualify for the state tournament since it began in 1943. In the first round of the state tournament, we played Falmouth, one of the tournament favorites, at the old Boston Arena, which is now Matthews Arena of Northeastern University. The Boston Arena was also the initial home of the Boston Bruins way back when. Falmouth had made it to the final 8 teams, the quarterfinals, in the 1968 tournament, and was loaded in 1970. During the 4-year period of 1968 to 71, I'm reminded back to the record that Jack's teams had during those 4 years, when they went 9-0, 8-1, 9-0, and 8-1, a 4-year composite record of 34-2. During that same 4-year period, 1968 to 71, Falmouth's regular season record was 40 wins, 1 loss, and 1 tie. This is the opponent that we had to face in the state tournament. We lost that contest 2-1 in overtime. In 4 short seasons, Ipswich High's hockey team went from the bottom of the barrel to state tournament qualifier. The person who drove that bus was Coach William K. Laxo. A wonderful article appeared in the Beverly Times that said it all about the Cinderella 1970 hockey season and the terrific coach who led the way. I'm certain that Bill's disappointment was profound that he was not on the ice and behind the bench for the 1978 season. But Bill was a teacher's teacher who took his classroom responsibilities and the high school English department very seriously. Ultimately, Bill's dedication to Ipswich High School, its students, and the English department took precedence. Bill Laxo put Ipswich High School hockey on the map and richly deserves to be included in our Sports Hall of Fame. Please join me in congratulating Bill on his induction and also thanking him for almost 40 years of devoted service to our school system and our students. Bill?
Wow. Thank you, David, for nominating me and also for those generous words. Your remarks allude to things that happened 51 years ago, which makes my head swim a bit, not to mention what it's doing to my enlarged prostate. Now, that's going back a long time, so I know that there are some people who might think that Ipswich High School hockey began then, but that's not the case. As you heard a little bit earlier, it was alive before me, and so I'm not its father. If anything, I was only a stepfather. You might ask Mel, not Maureen, gee, he's really swell, full of Hal Bowen about that, because he was on the team before I was there, and my fellow inductee, Steve Hopping, was also there. They can give you a better history than I can. Really? Did you start in the 7th grade? Yeah. Wow, I didn't know that. Amazing. Now, in my memory, hockey existed before 1966 as just one of many school clubs, you know, chess club, ski club, whatever. And the club had an advisor, David Welsh. I know this because I had skated once with the kids while I was doing my student teaching. It was just a loose, happy bunch of guys
who rented the occasional hour at Governor Dummer's outdoor roofless rink, not the beautiful facility that they have now. And they would simply choose up sides and play a glorified version of pond hockey. There were a few pretty good skaters, but there were a lot of stick leaners as well. I was only 22 when I signed a teaching contract to join the English faculty. Principal Joe Rogers, knowing that I had played hockey in college, surprised me by asking if I wanted to be the club's coach. Now, I assumed that he meant advisor, so I happily agreed, but I wondered why the position was open. And I was told that Mr. Welsh didn't want to continue in his role because he couldn't skate. Well, you know, that made a lot of sense to me, and I thought, hey, this will be fun. I have a feeling that Mr. Welsh knew a lot more about things than I did. So the care of that infant program was passed from his hands to mine. I eventually learned that we would be competing interscholastically, so I really was going to be a coach and not just an overseer. Now, our legendary athletic director, whose name has come up so often tonight, Elliot Roundy, had entered us into something called the Merrimack Valley League, about which I knew nothing. I figured it consisted of small school, inexperienced teams like ours, and boy, was I wrong. I mean, I was incredibly naive about that. In the late fall, I got the news that the senior, who was supposed to be our best player, had flunked his courses and was ineligible. Now, as it turns out, that was a harbinger of things to come, but I didn't worry about it too much at the time. Two more things I learned was that all the games would be played at the Forum on Route 3 in Chelmsford, more than an hour's ride from Ipswich, and that the driver of the bus to Chelmsford would be me. Interestingly, you know, David talked about driving the bus. He used it as a metaphor. No, I really drove the bus. I pointed out to Elliot that I had never driven a bus before, and I didn't have a license to drive one, but, you know, Elliot, he just gave me a wink and he said, "You'll do fine." And I did. I did fine. And that for me was a small victory personally, because that would really be the only hockey-related victory that I would have that year. As David told you, our opponents turned out to be very experienced, very talented, very deep, and they were drawing from established youth hockey programs. So we got creamed. Our first few games were baptisms by fire. And honestly, it was a wonder that no one got seriously hurt. I remember one instance when Tony Kokchor, who had recently come over from Poland, came off the ice very red in the face, and he said, "Mr. Laxo, that guy tried to kill me. I don't want to go out no more." I respected his wishes. Now, I was pretty dejected about being so outclassed, and Elliot tried to cheer me up. And by the way, I could tell you some great Elliot Roundy stories, but Kathy has taken them all away from me. But you know, he was pretty upset about things after those first couple of losses. But anyway, he tried to cheer me up by announcing one day, he said, Bill, Stevie Grimes set an MVL record by making 57 saves in a game." Now, that news didn't help much because the 57 saves came along with 76 total shots on net. Elliot reminded me of his favorite motto. He said, "You gotta look on the bright side, Billy boy. Every day's a new day." Elliot loved that. Every day's a new day. And as days dawned, we did look on the bright side, or at least we looked at things with our eyes wide open. And as David told you, we got down to business, we were determined to get better, and gradually, little by little, we did, as David has told you. I've got a quote here. It's a verse by a fellow named Thomas S. Monson. "Good timber does not come with ease. The stronger the wind, the stronger the trees." Well, for us, the wind was a Category 5 hurricane from 66 to 68. And I am gratified that we had a group of kids at that time who were willing and able to stand up to it. They did become strong, and they ended up undefeated champions in 1970. After 1970, frankly, we didn't have a lot to cheer about. I no longer had to drive the bus. I think somebody ratted me out. They wouldn't give me the keys anymore. But every year, the wheels seemed to keep falling off. We lost some potential stars to eligibility issues, family moves out of town, and the worst thing of all, to me, defections to prep schools. And as a coach, trying to build and sustain a program, those personnel losses were really hard to take. And rightly or wrongly, I began to question my own leadership. Nevertheless, some players from that era who stuck with the program and still stand out in my memory for their loyalty and commitment, well, you could make up an all-star first line from some of them. And I want to mention Dave Reynolds in goal, Billy Cockfield, Stanley Appleton, and Robert Aponis up front, and a defense pairing of Peter Parody and last year's Hall of Fame inductee Paul Lees, whose name has been mentioned several times tonight. I want to acknowledge a few other people for their contributions, both on and off the ice. Professionally, I'm deeply indebted to my former boss, Joe Rogers, who really wanted to be here tonight, but his health prevented that. And obviously to the late Elliot for all of their guidance and support. I didn't have an assistant in 1966, but Dave Shaw, who is the father of Steve, class of '69, skated at our practices, and he helped steer me to some useful sources on system hockey. From that first team, Eddie Carr was a great leader, as well as my English to Polish translator with Tony Kay. Tony, by the way, regained his courage, and he played hard for 2 seasons. From the 1970 championship team, obviously, David Bialek, my introducer, was a one-man gang with awesome speed, stamina, stick-handling skills, and that year he scored an amazing 38 goals, and I think he had 13 assists in 14 games. His goals and total points are records that still stand. He would have been first-line center on any of those powerhouse MVL teams that we faced. And to my knowledge, he is still the only IHS player to go on to play at a successful Division I hockey college. And I have to mention Dave's fellow captain, Bruce Cutway, a skinny kid from Kingston, Ontario. No, I did not recruit him. He too came here to get an education. But anyway, Bruce Cutway came here in 1968, and he became our first puck-moving defenseman. He was a very heads-up guy. He was very gung-ho, and later he was my second assistant coach. My first assistant coach was math teacher Chuck Nicolosi, for those of you who remember him. He was a great helper. And my final assistant, Don Henniger, was a huge asset, having played hockey at Ithaca College. He, by the way, will be a state Hall of Fame cross-country coach at Newburyport. And lastly, I must recognize the late, great Bill McKinney. I'll bet probably most of you have never heard of him. He was the father of Bruce McKinney, class of '72. If you can accept that I was stepfather to the hockey program, then Bill was the godfather. He kept some of our kids skating in the summer, and he provided us one year with game jerseys. For one Cape Ann League season, because of sweater attrition and a tiny budget, we resorted to wearing the green, white, and gold of the Cicero, Illinois Flyers, a junior team once coached by Bill and sponsored, according to him, by the Chicago Mafia. With his own money, Bill had the name Cicero changed to Ipswich. Now, the ex-Mafia shirts might not have helped us win games, but they confused our opponents a little, as in, when did Ipswich change from Tigers to Flyers? Those shirts became rare collector's items, and even I don't have one. My parenting in the life of IHS hockey ended in the spring of 1977, as David told you. The situation was much more complicated than David explained, but I'm not going to go into that because I already did. I didn't stop coaching hockey after that. I had 2 young kids at home who were just starting to skate, so I turned my attention to helping them and coaching hockey in Newburyport and coaching also at hockey camps until I think it was 1984. Before I finish, I want to offer two apologies. First of all, to the coaches in this room, many of whom have been mentioned, Jack, Kenny, Steve, Rolly, Kiki, Glenn, Roger, I'm sure Dougie's here too. I have to tell you that your winning records are just absolutely astonishing. They far surpass mine, and I mean it when I say that I feel like the dumbest kid in an accelerated class. And another apology to my sons, Eric and Kurt. When they were toddlers and their mom had to work nights, I dragged them along to practices at the Newburyport rink and encouraged them to run around and play in the stands while I was on the ice. Gentlemen, I'm sorry for all the times Vance Eau Claire stuffed you into those filthy trash barrels. And finally, to our unofficial team psychologist, whom I engaged shortly after those first disastrous defeats in 1966, and married several months later, my beautiful, loyal, understanding, supportive wife, Linny. Thank you, my love, for keeping me and some of my players sane, more or less. And now at last you know why the kids' snowsuits always smelled so bad. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to the Hall of Fame committee, and thank you all for your polite attention. Is this going to roll off, Steve? No, it's fine. No, it won't. Aaron, thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this was, thank you. All right, so just like one more minute. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Some people come a long way. Ruben comes up from New Jersey every year. Tuck Clancy came up from the Cape. And Chuck Daly came from a long way, too. But we really appreciate the preparedness of the Hall of Famers, of the presenters. Makes the night go much smoother. Makes up for me. And thanks, and hope to see you all next year.